Hey everyone, I thought it might be fun to share with you some thoughts and highlights of my Season 15 experiences. Our global schedule was a little scattered, shall we say, so I don't have all of the build info of what I was wearing week to week, unless I have them in the videos. But this season I decided to try something different and play as Ancient Artifact user. I normally play full support Saint, which I did play a bit of to help some guildies in week 4, but for weeks 1 through 3, I did play as Elf. I still helped out as an orb holder. I wasn't built full tank on week 1, based on the snapshots that I caught from my game 3 on week 1. And you can also see I had my Bleak Relic in too, and just some gear mixed and matched all over. What I really liked about playing Elf was how far I could be in the back line for trying to assist with damage and control. The large sword can hit from so far away. As long as I had the enchanted sword up, it was satisfying catching the enemies out. Her camouflage was also really great. It took me a while to get used to keeping it active. At first I was also trying to manual most of her skills to understand what would be best to use and when with her playstyle and how she should be played in PvP. Space compression was also really great, trying to catch enemies off guard, pull them in, pull them away from their teammates, and just cause mayhem. It was just really great and really funny to see what you could do and just catch people really off guard whenever. Since there was 2 of us playing Elf on the team, it was actually pretty funny because it would almost be like a tug of war, just pulling someone maybe back and forth once in a while. Maybe frustrating them, but you know, it's PvP. You know, it's about control. It's about controlling the game. Sometimes that means controlling the enemy, you know? My week 1 game 2 match was in chess, and I was having a really rough time at the start, especially since it was my first time playing chess with this job class. I started trying to get used to it and getting used to the skills and utility that she has in her kit. You know, something especially with the space compression pull, when you think about it, is you can pull the enemy off the nodes to try to help your team capture the nodes. You can actually hit someone from one node to the other with the sword, you know, as long as it's enchanted, to kind of help CC from down the lane, especially if like your teammates are caught in a scuffle down there. There's a couple of things and how to look at it, and you know, you have to think differently, especially when you're not used to something. You know, similar to Elf pulling enemies off the nodes, Saitama can punch people off nodes, things of that nature. Dorms also have a bit of a push mechanic that they have as a passive, or there's a fear that they can also do. You know, those are, you know, a couple of little strategies you can think of when doing map 3 or the temple chess map. And I was also pretty proud of myself because I don't usually play DPS. I think the one thing I was struggling with the most was getting used to targeting other people. You know, when you're a support character, you usually click on someone in your party to target them, and you know, it's usually pretty simple, and then you check to see, you know, are they close enough, or can you target them and cast a spell that you need to cast. But as a DPS, it's sometimes not as clear, even if you're using the, you know, the side UI to target the enemy players. So if you're using the left side UI to help you target the enemy players, or I would use the right side retargeting system. Sometimes, I don't know, I would get that message fairly often of there's no unit in view. So I was kind of struggling to get used to these sorts of things as a fresh PvP DPS. But I was pretty proud of myself getting used to Elf survivability, using camo, pulling people, trying to keep them in CC, keep them in check, and everything, and you know, trying to keep the enemy busy, maybe on certain nodes, so that way they wouldn't be causing mayhem elsewhere. I had this really good 1v1 here where we took each other out, but you know, I wasn't even angry because I was like, oh hey, I still took them out. I was like, hey, I did it. You know, it was a tough matchup considering I have no idea what I'm doing. And even though we lost this match, we're actually really far behind. And by the end of the match, we actually had caught up in points. Actually pretty close. We had to make them fight for it by the end as we started catching up in those points. You know, chess is definitely one of those maps that if you start losing control of those nodes, start losing control of the map, it can definitely turn around very quickly if you just, you know, you just gotta keep it together. Keep cool, keep calm before those points just run away from you. Playing on map 1 felt really comfortable because there's so many of Elf's skills that are just perfect for trying to help control this center of the map right here, right? Side split is wide enough to damage a lot of them if they're stacked there. The super long wave is wide and long enough to take care of almost the entire area. I was kind of going across the center, through the center throughout this match, and you know, in other matches like this. Also, when your team is more in the center and you use camo, you can catch more of them in order to share that buff. And it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of nice. It's interesting how certain maps really seem to emphasize some of her kit better than others. And of course, being an orb holder isn't always the safest thing. Here, I just get knocked out. I still don't know what happened here. Tried to counter me retaking the orb, but that's okay because I trusted our Jorm to take them out for me this time around. In this later matchup, I was trying to use locked camera mode again. I think I was trying to experiment at the time, trying to see if maybe I could find a better way to aim the spells a bit better. I don't know, you know, just trying to experiment, see what works, because I had a couple of bad games, or what I felt were bad games for myself previously. And honestly, I think my biggest enemy was this corner right outside the base with this gravestone. It seems like I kept getting caught in it. I felt like I didn't do very well in this matchup either. It was a very tough matchup, but I still did my best trying to practice aiming everything. But I think my biggest hang up was trying to make sure the enchanted sword was always up, because you could tell there was a very big difference in catching everybody on the spot. It seemed like if I didn't have the buff up, there was definitely a huge difference on whether or not I caught people. It seemed like either maybe it was a desync thing that, you know, if they were possibly just off to the side a little bit, I just wasn't catching them as often in order to stall them and black hole them, even for just that 1 second. That could have possibly, you know, made a difference. After this, I also experimented with putting a couple of things on auto and, you know, trying to see if that could also help me react a little better and at least dealing damage a little faster. And also trying to keep my buffs up, since I felt like I really wasn't doing a good a job of that, as I really felt I could have been doing a much better job at keeping the buffs up that should be up full time, such as Enchanted Weapon. In order to control my positioning, and I do this on my Nidhogg very often, especially in PvE, is what I do is I use Stay Alert actually quite often. So even though my auto is on, I will put on Stay Alert, so that way I'm not just running off, and I can still control my positioning very well. So that way I'm not just running off into the enemy, but I can control, you know, still stand on the node, or I can turn it off, or still, you know, move to the next node or move how I want, and then my auto will go off as long as an enemy is in sight or nearby. At the end of week 1, I stopped at just under 1300. It was at 1299. The match before this, I was at something like 1305, so I'd lost just a few points in that last match. So heading into week 2, I was still experimenting with my auto bar and trying to make the best of things, still learning this DPS setup. In this game, we had a pretty challenging matchup that culminated into this very big brawl in the end over here on this right-hand side. We had mostly orbs, and we used a lot of teamwork to just try and hold everything together in order to bring ourselves the win. You can kind of see through my playstyle here that I'm just trying to avoid everybody else. I try to do my best to catch people, try to pull them in, or as they run away, trying to catch them out and be like, nah, you're still in this. You're still in this. So I was actually pretty proud of this one because the start of this was actually really rough. Also in week 2, we changed things up where I wasn't a main orb holder and I became a backup orb holder. I don't remember why because it was quite a while ago. So I was more protecting the orb holders in this setup for week 2. But it was kind of fun. It's kind of a fun challenge trying to maneuver around them, trying to seek out the enemies that are trying to take out, you know, my teammates and everything, and really trying to keep an eye on things in a very different way, especially with Elf and trying to help control the targets, and then either on voice chat trying to call for backup, or just, you know, trying to take them out myself. Elf doesn't have her own sustain naturally unless I swap spells very frequently or unless I use my Seed of Yggdrasil card. So that's also something that I was struggling with if I was not reacting fast enough or using side split fast enough in a lot of these PvP fights where I was simply just not performing that well and, you know, and trying to keep myself alive by trying to get that damage output at the same time. This other match I had, we didn't have control of the map, but I felt they did a pretty good job catching a lot of people within the sword spell, and at least, you know, and at least practicing trying to catch people out and this and that and trying to use the auto effectively. Was it effective? Hard to say since we didn't gain control of the map back, but I still had a lot of fun. I think that's the one thing that I think is most important is, especially if you're not playing full competitively, is that as long as you're playing a job class that at least you're having a bit of fun with, either the fun is from, you know, either you're getting a lot of kills or you're doing a lot of damage, or maybe you just like the play style. I think sometimes that's just what's most important. And that's what I really liked about Elf's spell kit in particular. And what I like about some of these other hero spell kits is that even if they aren't very viable in all aspects, you know, sometimes they're just good to pick up for maybe a couple of certain instances or a couple of certain things that, you know, I can utilize them in. So that's why I decided to try, you know, using Elf in PvP, because her kit and especially the black hole removing, and especially the black hole that she has that's dispelling things off the enemies, it's still very effective. Even if I'm not getting all the kills, I'm still doing a lot of utility, even if it's just for the rest of my teammates. While I might not be getting all of those last hits to be getting the kills myself, it still just felt good. It still felt satisfying to play. On week 2, we were playing with a Dorm, and what drove me a little crazy is we had one match that had an opposing Dorm, and it's not very clear when it is the enemy UFO on top of you until it's already demolishing your HP. So I got caught out a couple of times, and even the second time, I don't know what I was doing. I got caught out for a little bit by this UFO. And I got caught out by the hell plant. And then I got ambushed by the entire enemy team in this corner trying to regain back the orb. I played very badly here in these few seconds. Map 1 was still, I think, my favorite map to play as Elf, because when they're all stacked together, it's just so satisfying to see all the damage numbers pop up when you just do all your AoE spells. Because it's so satisfying to see all your AoE hit them right on the center. My week 2 ended at 1746 points, which really isn't too bad considering we had a lot of randoms fill in some of our matches in the later part of the night. And I was still struggling and learning a lot about the class, it still felt like. But overall, I was still having a lot of fun. How do you like my week 1 and week 2 highlights so far? I'll try to make some time to put together another set of highlights for you real soon, as I did change up my playstyle for week 3 quite a bit, adding some hide and stealth into the mix with a change up in cards. And also playing a bit of Saint over in week 4. Did you or do you plan to change your PvP class in the upcoming Sixes tournaments? Let me know in the comments below. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next video. And don't forget to like and subscribe.